Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King. And the goal of this podcast is to help you create ecosystems and environments where people thrive. Look, today's episode, I'm ready. I really feel like I'm sitting across from the business mogul, startup queen herself. She is saying that this is her last month or last week until she's an exit founder. Like, she has built something that lasted. She's built something that stood the test of time. She's a keynote speaker. She's a business and leadership coach and a founder, or a former founder of a nonprofit organization. And she has spent more than a decade helping individuals and organizations, what I like to say, unlock their potential, helping them cultivate confidence, helping them strengthen their leadership, and ultimately build cultures where people like this podcast feel empowered to thrive. Lisa, how you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. And thanks for that nice intro. It's funny that you bring up entrepreneur. I've been called a scrappy entrepreneur since I was in my early 20s. So it's like, yeah, I still am sometimes. I love it.
No, I'm here for it. You're the epitome of what it means to build something that lasts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I find that it doesn't just start in these moments that you get closer to exiting. There were a lot of micro moments. There was a story behind what you've built and what you're exiting. Mm-hmm. Where did that story begin, though?
That's a great question. So I run a nonprofit called LEAD. So it started as Self-Love Beauty when it first started. And the reason why it started was of my own journey. I think a lot of entrepreneurs start things because we see a problem. We want to be part of the solution. And that was it for me. I didn't have I should back up and say I've always been the loud kid, right? The energetic kid, the kid that could mask how they were feeling internally when they were struggling with self-esteem, when they were struggling with confidence. I was a really good athlete. I was always the captain of, the sports teams in high school. And so I was able to mask behind a lot of that. But inside was a little girl who was struggling to fit in. I was, that circle that was trying to fit into the square trying to fit into the circle my whole entire life. And I really struggled with that. And so then I started to embody this, like, okay, we need to make some changes in my 20s. And I started a nonprofit, first a blog, and then it became a nonprofit. And that really happened because I was teaching a workshop, and I was watching two young girls talk very differently about themselves. And what I caught on to is that they were picking that up from home. And it wasn't the parents' fault to a degree because they didn't have the skills and the tools to help their kids. And so what I realized at that moment is that we were having a generational gap in confidence and self-esteem. So that's actually how we started. We've evolved so much since then, but I love the, going back to the roots of why we started. And it's pretty cool and incredible to see how far you can come.
Let me ask you this question. What was your catalyst moment? Like, one of the questions that I'd love to mention in any podcast episode is, what was that slingshot moment that pulled you back, that really was that moment that accelerated you to what you're doing today? Could you walk us through how you felt, where you were during that moment?
Yeah, so I'll actually share a few of them. So the first one is when I went to Michigan State University, we didn't have social media as a big deal then. So that kind of tells you everybody my age. But I remember my last year as a communications major, and we had to take this driver's license to social media class. And part of that is that we had to build a blog. And I remember thinking about, what am I going to make this blog about? And at that time, I lived in an apartment with two girls. One was going to be a nurse and one was going to be a doctor. And I was a comms major. And I said to them, I am going to start a blog and I'm going to call it Self-Love Beauty. And they looked at me and they were like, okay, Lisa's crazy. They didn't know my world, right? Very different lives. And I said, I'm going to go for it. So I built it. And I did nothing with it. I built it to, pass the class. And then the next moment that I really started to embrace it is I was working for a corporation. They moved me to a different state. It was my first time in that state. And all of the emotions of my self-esteem and confidence really started to happen there, of like, okay, I am not in my element. I'm going through a lot of changes. And I started to write about it. And so that was a caveat, I would say. And then another caveat would be is one day I was going to shut down the blog completely. I was like, this is it. I'm done. I was, growing in my career and the corporation. And I kid you not, that night, one of my blog posts blew up, and I think I had over 100,000 views in like 2 hours. And back then things didn't go viral like that. So this is like decades ago. And I just was like, okay, I call it God winks, where I was like, okay, God, got it. Like I can't give up. And so those are very early pivotal moments. Obviously I've had a lot since then, but I think that those were moments where when you get the sign, you're like, okay, I just have to keep going, even when this makes no sense. At the time as well.
No, I love that. And you started to make sense of things. You started to piece the puzzle pieces together. One of the things that I heard years ago is when we're building a puzzle, we focus on the outside. And then we start putting the pieces together in the inside one by one. What is one puzzle piece, that one moment, one realization in your life that you would like to share today that oftentimes people overlook or don't ask you?
Oh, that is a really great question. I think one thing that people don't realize as an entrepreneur, it's kind of a joke sometimes, although she's a serial entrepreneur, she does all these things, but there is so much depth that goes into a person that has 20 tabs open at one time. And is also trying to find their zone of genius. I'm a visionary, and visionaries sometimes can be really hard to work with, because you're like, whoa, you have this idea. Like, how am I going to bring that to life? But to anybody out there, I would say, if you get to work with a visionary, absorb it and embrace it and love it, because there is so much beauty when you allow a visionary to be themselves. And I think a lot of times people have put me in boxes. And I fell into those boxes. I allowed myself to not embrace who I was, which had nothing, which didn't help my mission then. I wasn't living out my mission. And so I would say that was a moment. I'm probably missing the question a little bit, but that was the first thing that came to my mind. Is one thing I'd love for people to know is when you get to work with a visionary, take full advantage of it. And you have no idea how amazing and incredible their idea can soar if you just allow them to keep moving forward in those moments.
Lisa, what's your vision? I always, when somebody mentions the word visionary, and it's a word that helps describe them as a person, I always love and really just like to sit back and listen to their vision that they have for their own lives and for the communities that they're working to advance.
Yeah, I think if you would have asked me that 10 years ago, is very different than what my vision is now. But one thread that has stayed the same is, as I'm an exiting founder from a nonprofit, everybody keeps saying to me well, what's next? And I said, the avenues in which I'm doing things are changing, but what I'm doing isn't. I just want people to become the next best version of themselves. So I'm not here on this planet to help you get to your last version of yourself. My vision is to really get you to the next piece. And that's what I do through my coaching and speaking is, here are the tools. Here is my vision of how I'm going to do that. And so my visionary mindset then goes to, well, how am I going to serve that? How am I going to help people do that? And then my visionary mind can think 10 years from now of where I am, and how the people are coming up to me saying, okay, I'm utilizing these tools, or I'm the next 2.0, 3.0 of myself. I think that is what my vision is in life. And I think that that's what I'm called to do, is that's my purpose, is to use my zone of genius to help people become the next best version. I think when you talk personal, I also think I'm incorporating a lot more into my life of how do I show up in different ways for different people, and what does that look like? I'm now a mom. I wasn't a mom a year ago. And so thank you. And so for me, I would say that that's even shifted for me of how do I show up to help my son become the next best version? So it's not just in my work, but it's also in how I do that with my friends, my family, the lifestyle that I've chosen to have with my husband, how we show up for each other and cheer each other on. So that's my vision. I think it's cool that I know exactly the products and services in which I want to do that. And all I'm doing is tweaking along the way. And that's, I want for people too. It's it's okay to pivot. It was scary to say, I'm going to exit my nonprofit and have someone else lead it. It's also scary to not live out your dreams.
I do agree.
The next best thing.
There's somebody listening right now that's not living out their dreams. There's somebody right now that keeps hearing the term, the next best version of yourself. And they're writing it down, they're taking notes, but they're trying to figure out what does that look like? How would you define what that means to be the next best version of yourself?
Yeah, I think that the coolest part is what I tell anybody first is you have to sit still in order
Mm,
to even know what that means. I could sit here all day and scroll on my phone and have everybody else tell me what the next best version of myself is. But like when you sit with yourself, you close your eyes and you picture what you want your life to look like in 6 months from now.
yeah.
It is very, chill worthy in a sense where you get chills all over your body of being like, that makes sense. I think the scary part is people are like, that's a lot of work
Mm,
sometimes,
yeah.
and so we can sit here all day and say like, I know what I need to do. I think the biggest thing is that people just don't do the action because it's not
Yeah.
fun sometimes. Like
Not
it can
enough.
also like change up your whole life and like, that's tough. And so I would say to anybody that might be taking notes is sit still for 10 minutes every day for the next 5 days. Just give yourself that starting moment and ask yourself like what do I even want? And that's a fascinating question, Kyle, because I will tell you, I've been asking a lot of my coaching clients like, well, what does you showing up your full self look like? And the pause and the stare that I get on the other side of the screen or in person is Lisa, I don't know.
Mm,
So sit with that, right? Like sit with that and think about like, oh, how do I want to show up that I'm the same person wherever I'm at? And I think that would help someone get to the next best version of themselves.
I really appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing the I don't know answer, because I ask that question, I feel like a lot to people. It's like, it's kind of simple. It's like, what do you want? Like, I'm not happy. Well, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? And it's not as easy as we think answering the question of what we want, because I don't know if it's conditioning. I don't know what it is. I was reading a book by Connor Beaton, a men's work, and there was a perspective in there that mentions how we're always agreeable to things, like how school systems teach us to be agreeable. And to disagree means to be creating conflict. And especially within organizations as well, as like then when we get jobs, we're supposed to agree with the processes and all these different things. And if we speak out against something, then we're looked at as kind of the bad apple. And it's further, I feel like, conditioned us to not have our own thoughts and our own wants and our own desires. And we've never really sat in what it means to want and do and pursue the things that we want. A few years ago, a mentor of mine, he literally asked me, he was like, I want you to write down 100 things that you want in life. I said, 100 things. And it took me probably 5 days to just figure it out. And then once I started flowing, like, oh, I want to go to this person. I'd love to meet this person. I want to do this. This is the family structure that I would love. And all of these different things, it got easier. But until he asked me that, I had no idea what I wanted. For that person that has no idea, they've been sitting for not just a few days, they've probably been sitting with this question deep down for months. Where do they go from there, Lisa?
Yeah. So this is what I would say is sometimes the answers come right away and sometimes the answers don't come for years. And I mean that in the most beautiful way. And it's tough. I will be honest. And there are moments where I've sat in the really hard, muddy times where like, it's gotta be better than this. Like, I know it's on the tip of my tongue, right?
Yeah.
But it's not making sense. And I can't figure that out. And then one day, I swear it's in the weirdest places. You might be at the gym, you might be taking a shower, you might be in your dreams or when you wake up. And it's gonna click one day and you're like, well, that all makes sense. And had I known that back then, but I think what we totally forget, and I'm gonna be honest, like I have many times, is the process. Right? Like we don't want to live in the process. We don't want to sit in the suck. We don't want to sit in all of that. But to anybody sitting here being like, well, where do I go from here? It's one step in front of the other. It's one foot in front of the other. And it's surrounding yourself with people also that want that for you too. So I would say in my life, I'm very big on internal validation. Like you got to look internally, but I also truly believe that if you surround yourself with people that are never going to be good for you, like you're never going to be able to find that validation inside because you're just absorbing. And we hear this all the time. We hear this, like you are the 5 people that you surround yourself with. But then we know that, and these are great little metaphors and quotes and things we hear, but like, what's the action? How are you really making that a choice? And so I've had to sit with loss of friendships, like loss of, that relationship no longer serves me. I'm here. I've also had this really great moment where I've got to be around people where I'm like, oh, your energy is so contagious. I want more of you. Yeah. And that's the energy that I want. And the other thing too is like, I don't surround myself with people that just tell me that I'm great. I have a lot of people that are like, check yourself. And I think that is beautiful when you're becoming the next best version, because people want you to become better. You shared something earlier that I want to just share and caveat off of is like, we are told to have like rules and things that, I was just talking to someone, and I'm not a rule follower. And I mean that in like a legal way, like I follow the laws. But I think one thing that I have really struggled with is the rules, because I'm like, well, what was that made for? And I'm a questioner and I ask the things. But I think then when people put you in a box to follow those things, it's really hard sometimes.
Exactly.
And that's really hard for people to become the next best version when they're like, this is all I know. And if I step out here, it doesn't define the rules that are put in place. And so you have to look internally and do a lot of reflection.
When I think about that reflection process, it can get muddy. It's like this emotional battlefield internally. It's like, especially with leaders today, we're expected to operate from a sense of confidence, but then still be vulnerable. We're wanting to be decisive, but then we still have to be empathetic, is one of the newer words today. Like, how do you recommend that leaders navigate these complexities of all of this emotional tension that they feel inside as well?
I'm just going to say, like, how hard is that for leaders right now? It is tough. And I just want to commend any leader out there that's like, hey, I don't have all of the answers. Say that. Yeah. I think one of the things is I think it's really cool what we're doing, where we want people to be more vulnerable, but then we want to be confident. But I also think that there's this piece that we're looking at leaders to do that, but we're not looking at the whole ecosystem. So even if you're not a leader, that's really not fair to the leader that the employees also can't be doing those things. And I think that that's really unfair. As someone who's been a leader, where I'm like, I am trying my hardest, but you've got to give a little too. I think that that's like where the ecosystem really comes into play. And so to any leader thinking that they have to be at all, I would really recommend that you look at, well, what are you best at? And then be honest of like, hey, I know I want to be more vulnerable with my team. I just am not good at it. Okay. Yeah. Just say that. Like, don't fake it. Don't share something vulnerable because you feel like it. And then you go home and you go down a downward spiral all night because you wish you wouldn't have shared that, but you felt like you had to. Like, that's not fair to the leader. The leaders already carry so much emotional pieces that people don't see. Like, they're the ones staying up at night wondering if you're going to get the next paycheck. They're the ones that are making sure that like you're protected by everybody else. And that's something that's not talked about enough. As you can tell in my voice, I feel very strongly about these things because I work with a lot of leaders and I see their heart and they're trying and they just know what they know. Yeah. And so as an employee, I'll give a different perspective. I think it's really great when expectations are set both ways. Yeah. Like, you can share as a leader, like, here's my expectations of you. And an employee is allowed to say, here's my expectations. And then you just find the middle ground. Like, it's not going to be perfect. And then you also find out like who's going to mesh well together and who's not. So I don't know if I've answered your question fully, but I would say like it's okay to be both, but it's also really important to know what you're good at and also like where you're trying. I'm a very direct leader. And so for me, I've really had to work on that. I'm a servant leader. I've taken every test, servant leader, but I'm very direct. And so how do you find that mesh and get your point across without losing yourself in the process? And I think that that's where, for me, the more open I am with myself of like, hey, this is the type of leader I am, the more that my team knows that from the get-go and there's no surprises.
How do you master who you are as a leader? And I recognize there's tests out there, there's books, there's studies, there's podcasts, there's all of these things. Do you believe that it's possible, especially in the nonprofit space, to lead an organization without certain steps? Like, what steps do you find that are necessary for all leaders to have to go through?
Great question. I hesitate on that one only because so many things came to my mind. And I think that the true fairness to any leader is you're going to make mistakes. So just like know that. No one, I've never met a leader who's had it perfect. We all know that it doesn't matter how many jobs you've had. You go back to the leaders who you're like, they should have done this differently. Doesn't mean they were a bad leader. They just might have like managed something wrong. Exactly. I think that it's also that self-awareness. So I'm going to say like self-awareness is the number one key skill that I believe anybody should have. And the reason why is because when you can have the awareness of who's in the room, what I need to hire, who I can work with, it helps. I also will say this, and I think this is like something that I had to learn a long time, is what's the feedback that you keep getting? And it's not the feedback of, Lisa, like you're too loud or you're too direct. Okay, well, that's my personality. Now you're just picking me apart. But what are the key things that you get feedback on of like, hey, when you walk into this meeting, maybe come more prepared. I'm just sharing some examples, or maybe set your intentions beforehand. Okay, I need to work on being more proactive versus reactive, right? Like those are the moments where I think that there's those nuggets that are very powerful. But I think the self-awareness of like, hey, like this is the feedback that I keep getting. Maybe I should just try it. But also understanding when people are picking across your personality and it's like, okay, maybe we're just not going to mesh, and that's okay too.
I appreciate you mentioning that, because for me in my career, I went through stages, and I think it required me to be humble. And then that's when my leadership journey began. Right. And anybody listening, I don't want you to miss this, because I feel like Lisa says something that triggered me in all of the great ways. For me, self-awareness was non-existent earlier on. I had titles of leadership very early in my career, probably way too early in my career. And because I owned the title, it didn't allow me to receive feedback. And because of that, there were transitions that existed, and I wasn't really able to optimize my teams in the ways that I was expected to. But until I shifted and started to do the work and either seek out perspective or be willing to receive perspective, one of the things that I recognized in that journey, in that year, was I had multiple people over a course of a year communicate 2 words: follow up and follow through, which is technically 4 words, but 2 phrases. Where you have great intentions, you have these great ideas, you move super quick and execute, but it's all of those little steps that need to be handled. Another perspective that I gained was responsiveness. Is when someone emails, you would wait 4 or 5 days or a month to get back with these individuals. And initially I just thought, hey, I'm busy, et cetera, et cetera. And then someone asked me a question. They said, if a sitting president, in your busy schedule, nothing changed, if a sitting president emailed you and invited you to come to the White House, do you think that you would find the time to respond to that person? And I said, yeah, of course, it's a president. And the question that came after that changed my whole perspective. This gentleman asked me, they were like, well, what's the difference between a president, a principal, and a janitor? And I said, is that a serious question? And then they said, I wanted you to reflect on it. And as I reflect on it, there is no difference. They're all people, and they all deserve respect. They all deserve responsiveness. And just having someone that challenged me with kindness and still gave grace, but then held me accountable to a higher standard, and never happened again. And now I'm like 24 to 48 hour response time, and using calendars and tasks and all of these different things, because one thing that I think you exposed for me, Lisa, is that behavior creates your brand as a leader. So whatever organization you go to, whatever relationship that you're in, if they ask about you, you're that now person. If someone recognizes these things, Lisa, They seek out, they're ready to be humble, they're ready to receive, they're ready to become a better leader, they're ready to sit still, and all of these different things. What have you seen on the other side that happens when that leader becomes the person and they begin to do the unveiling and unpacking and the work necessary to lead that team?
Yeah. Well, first off, I'll say that you're living proof of that,
I
right?
appreciate it.
Like you've done the work and
Yeah.
you listened. And I'm going to caveat before I answer that question. One thing that came up when you said all of those things is how beautiful it is that people actually felt comfortable giving you feedback, Kyle.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that that's the other thing that I hear sometimes is, well, Lisa, I'm not receiving the feedback. Usually that means that they're scared to give you feedback then.
100%.
And they say like everything's great because they don't want you to get defensive. They don't want you to justify. They don't know how you're going to take it. And they don't want to cause conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So they just say like, everything's fine. And I don't know about you, but I'm not perfect. And therefore I need to always work on something. So I would say to anybody that hears that, like things are always great, ask for more. I'm not asking and saying that you're doing a bad job. It's that you need, as a leader, there's always room for improvement. So you have to be willing to take that, but you have to not shut down. Like you have to work through that defensive and shut down mode first. But to your point of, I'm literally picturing someone in the mud of like trying to figure out their leadership. And I'm picturing them like have the sun and the rainbows on the other side. And I think what comes up for me is how cool is it when you get to work and things are just like clicking, like things are going great. That's what it feels like when you do the work, like afterwards. So I share that because we're always doing the work. It's not fun. Being in the mud is not fun. Like a little bit of darkness, maybe some rain, like, I'm trying, like you pointed out, I had to get the emails. I had to make sure I responded. I had to stop avoiding the things that I just didn't want to do. But guess what? Now you have a brand of, I know if I email Kyle, he's going to get back to me, right? Like how cool is it to be on the other side? I think the middle is what's the muddy piece, is the uncomfortable piece. And so when you finally do that work, it changes. And I've seen people get promotions from doing that change. I'm actually included in that because I had to do that in corporate, and I got a promotion based off of me taking feedback and implementing it, which is great, right? That can happen. You shift in your jobs, you get more responsibility, like all of these things. And that's like work. But I also look at the personal life too. Imagine if you listen to these things, imagine how that shows up in your personal life too. If we're not responding to an email for a week, imagine what we're not responding to in our personal life too.
100%.
And so I think that it's like personally and professionally just a huge shift. And I'm literally picturing sunshine and rainbows over in the other side when you do the work.
It's interesting. And I appreciate you bringing in the point of the personal side, because a mentor of mine said also years ago, that's when this work began. He was like, how you do everything is how you should do anything. Like you can't be super, super transparent and vulnerable in your work environment, but then you're a liar to your spouse. You can't show up and make all this money, but then you're not taking care of your children. Like it can't be you're one here and then you're on the other side, you're completely different. And Carl Jung, he's a psychiatrist and psychoanalyst. He always says that success truly is one word: wholeness. Like you have to be excellent in all things, not just some things, and expect to be able to be great. And when you said that, it's like I had to really go deeper inwardly and go deeper on me. And then me building me allowed me to build my team and allowed me to build the things, all of the other external things around me. And anybody listening, what Lisa's saying works. It really works. I've gotten 10 times more opportunities, the level of network and connections and environments and ecosystems we've been able to build. And it's interesting because when you get better, things come faster.
Yeah.
So much faster. And I feel like the universe or God, whatever we believe in, allows us, because now we're prepared to handle the additional and the extra and the overflow.
100%. And that's where the joy comes. I mean, we work so much, you might as well enjoy it as we do it, but I know that are those like peaks and valleys as well. And so when you're in like that valley, like how are you pushing through it, and like how are you having the right tools to support you? You bring up mentors. I've had coaches, and I think that that's been like I have a coaching call after this actually, and I was like already like, all right, I know what I'm going to be asking her because I know what I want to get better at, because I know that holistically helps my whole life.
I love that, Lisa. This has been phenomenal, and I am super excited to have you speaking at the Contagious Culture Conference.
Yes.
I'm super excited. You have 60 seconds to transform every leader that's listening in, to give them a word of encouragement, to be able to give them a nugget or a gem that they need to hear today. What would you say?
I would say don't lose your voice. In a world that there is a lot of voices out there, to not lose your voice. And that gives me chills even saying that out loud for everybody to hear. Is I really truly believe that everybody needs to become their best version of themselves. But that means that you have to have your voice in this world.
Where can people find you? How can we support you? And what initiatives are you excited about in the future?
Yeah. So find me at lisatarkington.com. All of my information out there. The nonprofit I founded is called leadconfidently.org. Called Lead, but that's our website. And what I'm excited for is that I'm entering a new era of my life. You know, I'm going to be an exited founder here soon of a nonprofit, and I'm going full into keynotes and coaching. So if anybody is ever looking for support there, and I'm building a new program launching this fall. I'm not going to give out all the secrets, but we'll be definitely announcing some things here soon. So my heart is really, really happy right now.
I love it. Lisa, you are a gem. You are a light, and we appreciate you so much. Anybody listening in, follow Lisa on all of her platforms. Go to the website and hire her immediately, because the work that she is doing works in real time. Look, if you're listening in for the first time, subscribe to the podcast, like the episode, review the episode. And if you enjoyed this podcast just as much as I have, share it with someone in your world. One of the questions that we always ask on the Contagious Culture Podcast to our listeners is, what type of culture are you spreading? The energy you bring is the culture you create. Go make yours worth catching. We'll see you all next episode.